This is more live. Oh yeah, this works. Welcome to the 5th annual Baum Memorial Lecture and the 3rd annual reception and prize of Queering Religion to thank and celebrate Robert Holgate. Going to take a pause here and just give directions to someone who's trying to find us. Excuse me. Okay. So these are, I've been thinking of them as my angels on high. Now, I can say Judaism is mixed about angels, but my last name is Angel, so, okay, I know people are mixed about this angel too, but ever since I've been young, I've actually really felt the power and mystery of my ancestors being with me, even if they're no longer alive. And those people who are on high, I feel their pride. Today I saw some butterflies in my garden, a hummingbird. And I like to say that our angels, they're kvelling, that's I guess the Yiddish word for feeling joy and seeing what's continuing on. I got to know Cheryl Lazar about 7, 8 years ago, which maybe 9 years ago, as part of being able to be a rabbi to her and accompany her in the months, the years, and months and weeks and hours of the end of her life. And I got to experience her extraordinary sense of humor and irreverence. She was a little nervous meeting a rabbi. Why did she need a rabbi? It might bring a kanai nahora. That was a word we talked about a lot, which is a superstition, like if you might invite something in you don't really want. But she understood that the opportunity to grow close and that healing happens in lots of different ways, that the connections that are made throughout life, maybe they don't heal you into the health that extends your life, but they heal you in terms of the love and accompaniment and knowing that you're going to be part of people's lives well after you're gone. And that was true for Baum. This portrait is called Man of Leisure. I always am tickled by that. Because Baum, in addition, you'll hear and learn more about him at the lecture that's in his memory tonight. But he had 4 distinct careers. He was incredibly educated and passionate about wanting to leave the world better than he had found it. And as I said, you'll get to meet him. Sometimes students, they think it might be a memorial, this evening's lecture, and it's not a memorial, but it is an opportunity to commemorate and learn in honor of his legacy. And thanks to Robert and to Pam, this is the 5th year that we've been able to have this lecture series where we honor a social justice activist, an LGBTQ Jewish social justice activist. And we've been doing that thanks to the generosity of non-Jewish life partner, Robert Holgate. I haven't outed you as a non-Jew before, but I think actually in these times it's really quite important to talk about and demonstrate what allyship means. And we need each other more than ever. I'm a cisgender lesbian rabbi who was part of the last class that couldn't openly come into seminary, so the last class of liars. We had to, you know, keep it close to the breast that we were queer. And that was many years ago. The last years we're in a perilous time. And so much of the progress that the elders who came before me and that I devoted my career to making strides, so much of that success and advance feels like it's up to us to double down and do all we can to keep ourselves from what historically has been a pretty terrible past. Treatment, religiously based homophobia and transphobia, and that's what queering religion has come to be here at USF, to be an opportunity to address religious-based trauma every day in my classes, and administrators and faculty who come and share, for instance, that they have queer kids or trans kids, or as the queering rabbi ministry that I have, I do hear about religious trauma for our queer community. And together we're working to build a community of belonging so that we can interrupt that hate. So I want to introduce Pam David, who's the co-chair of this event, and then I'll have a little bit more to say about you, Robert.
Doesn't matter?
That's it.
Okay, this one's a little shorter. Thank you for being here. I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the history of this event, and the rabbi mentioned it, but she doesn't really mention her role. So when my wife got diagnosed with cancer, I was in Chicago with my mother, actually in Highland Park, and we really didn't think there was anything seriously wrong with her, but her doctor had ordered a test and had called her up and said, come in early Monday morning, which was never good news. And she called me and said they found a tumor in my pancreas. And I literally sank to the floor because I was with my mother, who was dying of pancreatic cancer. And I had my oldest sister who was in remission from pancreatic cancer. And I sank to the floor and I said, I need a rabbi. Now, I have never said those words in my life. I was raised in a Jewish community, so very strongly Jewish identified. But when I was 12, I had the choice of either going to get religious education or playing tennis with the men's varsity at Lake Forest College. What is a 12-year-old going to do? So I have no religious education. Never thought about needing a rabbi, but at that moment I did. And I knew 2 rabbis in San Francisco, so when I went back, I was like, well, which one should I call? But it so happened there was an event honoring my friend Marcy Edelman and her wife for the founding of Open House and their portrait. And I was a mess, but all of a sudden I saw Rabbi Camille standing there in front of the portrait all by herself. And I walked over and I said, I need you. And she turned and said, I'm here. And she was. For me, I didn't know if Cheryl was going to welcome you into our lives, but she did. And honestly, that whole 2-year period from when Cheryl got diagnosed to when she died, I don't know how I would have done it without Rabbi. And I remember coming over to Al's house one night. Robert was kind of in the kitchen, kind of in the conversation, and Al turns to me and says, so what did the rabbi do for you? This is after Cher's death. And I said, she saved me. I mean, she gave me guideposts. Jewish guideposts that really, for one thing, she made Cheryl less scared of death. Cheryl was more scared of death than anybody I'd ever met. And she didn't believe in angels, but by the end of it, I think she did. And so the rabbi who had married was part of the ceremony that married Al and Robert, but came back into Al's and Robert's life and did the same shepherding for them that she did for me and for Cheryl. And Robert and I both have just this deep well of gratitude and for this woman, this rabbi, who fortunately for us was not connected to a congregation, because I wasn't a member of any Jewish congregation and didn't really plan to be, but who could be there for us, and is truly a community rabbi. And I had many friends in that period who are not Jewish, who came to me and said, "Can she be my rabbi?" I said, "I'm sure she can, talk to her." So we wanted to support the rabbi's work at USF, the queering religion, the honoring queer elders, being part of the ministry, being the only rabbi in residence at a Catholic university, and for sure the only queer rabbi in residence at a Catholic university. And we didn't think, to be honest, that the university was treating her right, and we wanted to raise some extra money to support her, and that's where this came into being. So this is the first time I brought Cheryl's picture here, because I want people to know she was as much part of the genesis of this as my wonderful friend Al was, who I knew for 30 years, and I knew Cheryl for 34. So thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it back to the rabbi before I cry and ruin my makeup.
You stay with me. So the angels on high are Al and Cheryl, but the angels that are earthly are Robert and Pam. And those of you who have contributed in this special program and on the slide at the lecture tonight, your names are mentioned. And anyway, now.
And the reason we're here tonight is to celebrate this incredible family, also from Highland Park, Illinois, and the synchronicity that Al grew up in Highland Park and went to Highland Park High School. I grew up in Highland Park and went to Highland Park High School. John grew up in Highland Park and went to Highland Park High School. And his daughter Chazzie grew up in Highland Park and went to Highland Park High School. Jen, you were the odd one out, I don't know. But would you guys just stand up for a moment so we can celebrate you? Later, so they're not going to speak now, but they've already probably talked to most of you, because that's just who they are. And if you haven't met them yet, go up and introduce yourself. Okay. Thank you.
So this is the 5th year of making this happen. And I just want to name, Robert, that together with you and Pam and your friends and the community, you've raised over $500,000 for queering religion at the University of San Francisco. When students who are touring, considering coming to USF, or on a weekly basis when students pass by Toller Hall, where university ministry is, they see the sign that Dodge dutifully puts up before our breaking bread and the binary lunches. The queering religion, some of what your money has come to make happen are these lunches. Every year we've been able to add 20 additional students to the Spectrum Retreat, which is our university ministry, queer and spiritual students getting off campus for 3 days. We've had these events through the Holgate Prizes that have included the Lavender Lights Film Festival, efforts to ensure more gender-neutral bathrooms on campus, collaborations with the food pantry to reach hungry queer students, and artistic performances of pieces written for divine queerness, putting together trans and non-binary students and artists and voices. Your money has helped to support queer proms, field trips to historically queer history here in the Bay Area, and an investment in queer and trans student activism. And all this at a Catholic university, where right now we can be sure that there's some arm of the movement working on dogma to enforce anti-trans legislation. And so what we're doing here, student by student, straight and queer, allies all around, are to delay and disrupt. I want to say something about the Holgate Prize. I have the delightful opportunity to lift you up and recognize the work behind the scenes. And in order to do so, I want to invite last year's recipients, Hark, Rose, and Sydney Wright, to join me. I'm stand here. So just a word, their work has been tremendous. They have both realized their dream that they were honored for last year. This year, Sydney brought Lavender Lights Mini Film Festival 4 times. There were showings. We had an opportunity to hear from lesbian moms, and we had an opportunity to hear from Dr. Alan Gold in preparing for the holidays. That was an opportunity to do some trans education on Dr. Alan Gold, I would say. We also, this last Friday night, we had an off-campus collaboration with Congregation Shar Zahav, honoring queer religious Jews and their journey. And the 4th, looking at women in the trades, lesbians in the trades. That's Joss and Sandra, yeah. So it was a huge success, and we look forward to one more round in the fall, bringing Dr. Megan Rohr for the Lavender Lights Film Festival. So that has been a huge success. And Hark, you created this amazing piece in your course, Facing Ishtar's Darkness. Is that what it's called?
No, but that's fine.
Well, it has Ishtar. Tell me what it's called.
Ishtar's descent into the underworld.
Ishtar's descent into the underworld. And bringing other voices to present our ancient queer ancestor mythology and using it to nourish our own imaginations about what's possible. So you both have really made tremendous gifts to the campus community in using your Holgate Award, and I'd like you to introduce this year's recipients.
Oh, okay. Thank you. It's an absolute honor to have our names associated with all of yours. The Robert Holgate Pride Award is a fellowship to highlight student activism and queering religion at the University of San Francisco. This award, named in honor of LGBTQIA+ activist and philanthropist Robert Holgate, will enable the queering religion ministry to create more inclusive programs and build spiritual communities.
Robert Holgate is a this is not on very much. Ooh, hello. Okay, hi. Robert Holgate is a longtime gay activist and philanthropist in San Francisco. In honor of his late husband, Robert sponsored the 2022 launch of the Alvin H. Baum Jr. Memorial Lecture, and also supports the Rabbi in Residence program to honor the pastoral work of Rabbi Camille Angel. Robert's philanthropy is primarily focused on organizations supporting queer young people and elders, civil rights and strengthening our democracy, and related cultural work. The selection committee included Pam David, Mike Shriver, Dorothy Ehrlich, and Robert Holgate. Please give a warm applause while we welcome Robert Holgate up.
you follow that? Thank you so much.
They're going to help you by just bringing up the awardees.
Oh, I want to add a couple things.
Oh.
You know me.
Use the mic,
uh,
Steve.
If you would like to use the mic.
I can project for you.
Let Steve record.
Oh, sorry. See, I don't follow well. Oh, God.
It's really loud.
Isn't it? Let's see. I just wanted to add a little context to what Pam said about Al's journey with Camille. When we were together 10 years, then when marriage became legal, we decided to get married. And Al, being Jewish, wanted a Jewish rabbi to marry him. And me, leaning more Buddhist, I wanted a Buddhist minister. So the four of us got together and we had a magical wedding. It was wonderful, and what we did is we honored each of our beliefs. And for me, Camille represents that. She really represents pulling all communities together, and how magical for the students, for those of you who get to really experience what she's doing for you. And bravo, Camille, honest to God, really, you're an amazing leader. So I'm supposed to introduce the next?
They're going to read the title of each
See, I don't follow directions.
It's okay.
Just going to help you by inviting the two recipients up and naming what they're doing.
They're going.
Yeah, but you
Oh.
stay. You stay.
Yes.
Okay,
Because you're going to be handing.
just tell me to shut up if I get away.
You stay.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so our first awardee is Elizabeth Hawthorne with her project Whole and Found, which is focused on building peer support for trans and non-binary transfer students at the intersection of faith, identity, and care.
And during the selection committee, we left one person off. Steve Shimon was also part of our, no worries at all. But I just didn't want to leave Steve out. But what impressed me the most about Elizabeth when she came to present her project, Elizabeth's been, do you mind if I share? Elizabeth has been traumatized by the current administration because Elizabeth envisioned a career in the military. It was her lifelong dream, and she was living it, super happy. And then the demonic administration that came in removed her, wouldn't allow her to stay in her dream job. But you know what Elizabeth's doing? Is she's charting her own course now, and we're going to help her. You're beautiful, and you're going to go far. For you, my dear. Oh, and I'd like to add one other thing. You know me, I like to talk. The scholarship is for $1,500, but this year, for both recipients, I've decided to double it. So, and make it $3,000. Okay, sorry. I promise I'll shut up.
Okay, great.
Would you take a picture, or do I just? Okay, just.
You stay up here. Okay, absolutely. And so the second awardee is Hannah Martin. The title of her project is Queer Student Research Distribution, focusing on care for the whole queer person in the university ministry resource fairs.
I'll take the mic. And Hannah, when she did her presentation to us, she made it very clear that her main priority was the safety of students. The ability to be able to protect themselves. I know for me, when I was young, I had a blast. I came to San Francisco with nothing. I came from a town 250 in Wyoming. I was disowned. I loaded my car up and I got the hell out of there. But I learned how to survive in San Francisco. And for me, I had a lot of opportunities to have a good time. And I understand that. I was your age. And protection, safety, information is super important. And given the university that they're going to school in, it's not always easy. So I'm very proud of you, my dear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everyone. We're going to get going. The SWIC program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice of the University of San Francisco acknowledges our presence on the unceded land of the indigenous Ohlone communities and pays our respects to these traditional caretakers and elders, past, present, and emerging. It's our intention that this acknowledgement plays a role, however small, in a much larger process of confronting the past in order to create a not yet realized future rooted in justice. Welcome everyone to the 5th annual Alvin H. Baum Jr. Memorial event. My name is Aaron Tapper, and I direct our university's Jewish Studies and Social Justice program. I want to begin by thanking the JSSJ faculty and staff for organizing this event, in particular Rabbi Camille, Rabbi Chell, Victoria, and MJ. Before introducing tonight's program, I'd like to take a brief moment to tell you about our extraordinary university and JSSJ program. Founded in 1855, USF is our city's first university. Our tagline, "Change the world from here," is legit. With 8,000 plus undergrads and grads, US News and World Report says that we're the #1 most diverse campus in the country for many years running now in terms of racial and ethnic diversity. An educational institution where 1/3 of our undergrads are the first in their families to attend college. We estimate that some 7% of our student body identifies as Jewish, and anecdotally, perhaps as much as 30% identify as queer. A premier Jesuit Catholic school, in 1977, we became the first Catholic institution on the planet Earth to endow a Jewish studies program. In 2008, we became the first university of any kind, Catholic or otherwise, to create an academic program formally linking Jewish studies with social justice. No clap? Joke. In 2019, we added yet another first to our renowned history by creating a new position on campus, that of Rabbi in Residence, held continuously by one individual you will learn more about shortly. And more recently, in 2023, we added a second campus rabbi who also identifies as queer in terms of gender expansiveness. In the classroom, we offer a wide range of significant Jewish studies courses not found in other educational settings. Beyond the classroom, we offer unique events that are free and open to the public, like this. Through the SWIG JSSJ program, we believe that education is the best long-term way to create systemic change. Whether one has the time to take a semester-long course or a few hours to hear from a single speaker, education is fundamental to making our world better, paramount in shining the spotlight on the margins, on oppressed communities who are mistreated merely because of their race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or any other social identity altogether. Rabbi Angel asked me to introduce the queering religion aspect of the JSSJ program. And I've been thinking about that question for a number of days now. This is the 5th year we've had the Baum Memorial, which largely we owe a debt of gratitude to our angels on the ground, Robert Holgate and Pam David. Thank you so much for making this happen. And we also owe them our gratitude for supporting and ensuring that we have had Rabbi Camille Shira Angel on our campus for 7 years. This fall will be number 8. That's definitely. As a 6'5", white Ashkenazi, cisgender, heterosexual dude from Philadelphia, who somehow ended up in San Francisco at the University of San Francisco at a Jesuit Catholic school, no less. I attended 13 years of Jewish day school. I certainly did not think that this was in my future. The work that Rabbi Camille and now Rabbi Chell and others have been doing on our campus, not just in relation to queer people, but all people, has been nothing short of extraordinary. Not only have they truly been lending support to some people who have not felt secure or safe in their personhood, whether at home, whether on this campus, but the way in which they have been educating everyone about not just the add-on of queer people to any community, but the imperative fact of queer people at our school. I know our school, we tout the racial and ethnic diversity tagline all the time, and I know lots of students of color mock it. Nonetheless, we are an incredibly diverse campus in terms of race and in terms of socioeconomics, and also in terms of gender and sexual orientation. And this is my 19th year on campus, but the work that Rabbi Angel and now Rabbi Chow have been doing with regard to their queer ministry, if you will, has been nothing short of extraordinary. And if you don't know what queering religion means, and you don't know what it means after the next 90 minutes together, stick around and Camille and I will talk to you more about it. Thank you very much. I'm passing the baton to Camille.
Thank you, Aaron. This was a slide that is meant to convey some of the tremendous work inside and outside of the classroom of the SWIG program. And in just a moment, I'm going to play this few minutes of Baum made possible by Outwards and Mason Funk. But first, let me just say a few words. Starting in my notes. So this is the 5th in a series of lectures made possible by the family and friends of Cheryl Lazar and Al Baum, both of blessed memory, as a way to remember and celebrate their lives and their contributions to pursuing justice and equality for all of us. We host this lecture to coincide with the anniversary of Al Baum's death, known as a Yortzeit. It's a Jewish custom that at the anniversary of a dear one's death, you study something relevant to that person. We began this memorial lecture 5 years ago as a communal way to observe the anniversary by learning about what was important to him in his life. Among Al's concerns was addressing the harm often caused by religious-based homophobia and religious-based transphobia. For most of history, and still in many places, even here in San Francisco, being gay or lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, asexual, intersex have been deemed unnatural, immoral, and criminal. In the classroom, I hear the stories of young people who have been made to feel less than fully human for being who they are. Young people consider suicide as a means to escape the pain and shame which religious authorities, teachers, parents, texts, dogma, doctrines, politicians, priests, rabbis, and imams spew, preach, legislate, and dictate in order to destroy our lives. Students tell me that if their parents were to find out that they are taking some of the classes we offer here, classes that honor queer history and queer elders, their financial support would be taken away. Too many of my students report that they don't have any relationship with an adult who still believes in them once they know they're trans or queer. It's not surprising that many people have given up on religion. Religion gave up on them first. Religious-based hatred for gays and lesbians, transgender and gender non-conforming people is a historic injustice that continues to wreak emotional and spiritual havoc on people of all ages. And Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are largely to blame. Religious teachers, preachers, and parishioners have cherry-picked scriptural verses to create a false myth of God versus gay. But God versus gay isn't just a false dichotomy. It's a rebellion against the image of God itself. And it is among the most pervasive and hurtful untruths in America and around the globe today. People all across ideological spectrums continue to believe it. So when students and prospective students see the rainbow flag in the window of our university ministry office, when we make religious support for queer and trans people fully visible and explicit, it matters. For some, it's life-affirming, and for others, it's life-saving. Queering religion is meant to interrupt the damage religion has done to queer people by ensuring that we can live authentic in our spiritual and faith communities of belonging. It's a blessing for me to be a teacher here at this university that sits between the nexus of progressive values and interfaith religious pluralism, civic duty, and deep scholarship. The SWIG program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice makes my ministry possible. With that being the case, I want you to know that our major benefactor, Robert Holgate, and many friends of Robert and Pam David, they're not Jewish. Your allyship and sponsorship and commitment to the JSSJ program and our work to provide for queer students is trans-religious, really. And here it offers a timely lesson. So who was Baum? Al was warm-hearted, gifted, and a devoted community leader, well-educated with several degrees. Al had careers as a lawyer, an urban planner, a social worker, and a therapist. He was instrumental in founding the New Israel Fund, the Gay and Lesbian Task Force of the Jewish Community Federation of San Francisco, and he served on countless boards and committees, including the American Civil Liberties Union, the Lambda Legal Defense Education Fund. In 2013, he was honored as the Lifetime Achievement Grand Marshal of the 43rd Annual San Francisco Pride Parade. Not only did he do good deeds in abundance, but Al also motivated others to do good. Al became my friend nearly 25 years ago when I moved to San Francisco to become the spiritual leader of the historically gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual synagogue congregation Sha'ar Zahav. Al wanted to meet the new rabbi, to get to know me, and to also gently let me know I wouldn't be seeing him in the temple too much, but that I could call on him whenever I needed. I really got to know Al at the height of his joy as he and Robert Holgate prepared for their wedding, and together with a Buddhist priest, we performed Joy for You, with you, under that chuppah. And I also had the sacred privilege of helping Al reach his final days on this earth, surrounded by love. Being with people at these incredible life moments is so much of what being a rabbi actually is all about. And so now, here are a few minutes with Al.
So I come from an educated family. They knew a lot that they read, and they were financially comfortable. Honesty was valued. Education was valued. Hard work was valued. My father wanted both my brother and I to take over the business, but we didn't do it. He knew that we had brain power to do it. He was what they called then an investment counselor. But it was a very white-collar job, very socially acceptable job. My brother had no interest in doing it, and I had no interest in doing it. I always resisted being digital. I didn't like to be digital as a Harvard man. I didn't like to be digital as a brain with a capital P. I didn't like to be digital as a Jew. So I spent 5 years as a lawyer and 20 plus years as a city planner and 20 plus years as a therapist for the last 10 years or so. I haven't worked in the traditional sense. A major component of my life is the philanthropy. The common wisdom is that gay men become invisible at age fill in the blank. Some people say 50, some people say 6 foot there. And I'm invisible even now at my advanced age. Why? Because I can do things for people, and I'm quite happy with that. I was very closeted and very retrograde, or what the word is, those were often lonely years. I wanted a relationship, always wanted a relationship. So how do I make love? I decided I was going to move to an elevator building. So I sent out an email to everyone I knew, so to speak, that said, can you recommend a designer to work with me when I move? And the second one I interviewed was Robert. And the way I like to tell the tale was that after 5 minutes, I decided I wanted to work with him. And after 5 weeks, I realized I was going to work with him. And after 5 months, he finally succumbed to my retreatedness. It hasn't been an easy road for the two of us. We live separately. We go on these trips, long trips. We get in 24 hours a day for weeks. We're not legally married. But we have a little shrine over there. We have the invitation. We have the glass that we drank wine out of. And we have a thing that the Buddhists use to put good wishes in. We have people write good wishes for us, and we put them all in there, and they're still there to look at whenever we look at them. And then there's a Japanese drum that we brought back from Japan and was played during the wedding. We had a wonderful time. It was so much fun.
It's hard not to. So, Al has been an angel on high, helping to drive queering religion. And Robert, you've been an earthly angel for us. I'd like to invite you to come join me up here, along with last year's recipients of the Holgate Prize, Sydney and Hark. If you join me up here. And
Hey, come here.
yeah.
Can I just say something?
You can, of course. I can't stop you.
That's true. Sydney had prior obligation.
I just want to add, I have to say,
Talking
oh.
here.
Super proud of you, my dear. Seeing our wedding picture just got me this time. I'll just share a little bit about our history. When we first got together, I'll exaggerate a little bit. I made him wait a year because I was working for him. I was designing his house, and I was like, I'd sit on the couch, and he'd sit on the other side. Sorry, I keep screwing. He'd sit on the other side. Before I knew it, he'd be right beside me. And so I'd get up and I'd move, and he'd say, well, and he'd keep trying to push it, and I'd say, Al, I never mix business and pleasure. You're gonna have to wait. So I did make him wait a year. I love, it's so Al. But when we did get together, I fell in love with his heart. I fell in love with his philanthropy. I fell in love with what he was doing to make the world better, especially for people who were disadvantaged. He founded the New Israel Fund, which makes me super proud, because it's about an Israel that we all envision. I went on trips with him to Israel through the New Israel Fund. A little context, because I'm not Jewish, I tend to be more Buddhist, but his life of charity and giving was what I'd always dreamed of. When I came to San Francisco in the early 20s, in my early 20s, I had nothing. I left home because I was disowned. I was thrown out. I packed my car up and I came to San Francisco and I made it work. But while I was there, while I was here, I got into the practice of doing affirmations and moving energy in my body. And I did affirmations from that period on, from my early 20s, and I gave thanks for a life as a philanthropist. My life as a philanthropist. I gave thanks for my life of travel. I gave thanks for my life of joy, and I've done it to this day. So it manifested. It's powerful and it works. And I hope that you can all kind of find your way of manifesting that for yourselves. But getting back to Al, when we first were together, he said, okay, Robert, we're gonna do the philanthropy together. I'll bring you in as we go, as I get more comfortable, which I completely understood. But he said, what are your priorities? What would you like to do what would you like your focus to be? Because it can't be all over the place. Although I'll give you a secret. Al gave a lot of $250 checks to 300 organizations. So when I took over, I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. So I really honed it into more concentrated, bigger gifts for more need. But when he asked me that, I said, it's seniors and it's youth. And I've really embodied that. Marcy Edelman's here, who founded Open House, who Al was instrumental in making happen, which helps seniors. And talk about a manifester. Marcy has been Open House is now doubling its capacity. They are now working on a new project that's going to add more than double what they have currently for our seniors. And they're incorporating youth and seniors together. So bravo, Mars. And for me, the youth is super important because I grew up with a father who was abusive. I grew up in a family that was extremely homophobic, and I was thrown out. I had nothing. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go forward. And as a youth, I found my way, but it was not easy. And I am damn sure gonna do all I can to make sure to make everybody in our community's life better. And through the scholarship program that we've been able to create, that I'm super honored to be able to create, I've got to tell you, the students knock my socks off. Their ideas, what they come in to, we have a host committee, or a committee that decides who's going to be the recipient. So stimulating, so inspiring, so beautiful. But what the core thread is, they want to help. They want to help other students. They want to help them be safe, so that if they get in a situation where they have an opportunity, which I did when I was their age, to have a sexual relationship, that they can be safe. They can protect themselves. They can find the information they need to do that. Because when you come from a place like I did, you don't know what it is. You just want to have a good time. Or when you're a transfer student and you come here in the middle of a semester, you need to have somebody who will guide you, who will help show you the ropes, who, if you're trans, that'll tell you where the safe bathrooms are. Unfortunately, the campus doesn't have a lot, but they're here. They just need to know where they are. So that's a bit of my history, and that's a bit of why I am so proud of this program, so proud of the students, and it wouldn't have happened without Camille.
Well, it wouldn't have happened without you and the students. And
Right.
if you'll stay for a moment, Park's going to invite this year's recipients up.
Okay, guys, hi. I just want to thank you and everyone else, and also especially Rabbi Camille, on behalf of my friend Sydney and I, for allowing us to do incredible work over this last year. And now I'm going to invite the new people who are going to have the great pleasure of doing new and exciting things. Okay, so I would like to welcome up Elizabeth Hawthorne. Transfer students at the intersection of faith, identity, and care. And then I would also like to welcome up Hannah Martin, queer student, resource distribution, care, the whole queer person, university, ministry, resource fairs.
All right. Hey everyone, I'm Elizabeth. I'll be honest, I didn't expect to be up here today, and that's kind of the whole point of my idea actually, whole and found. A lot of us don't expect to belong somewhere until someone shows us the door. I am a veteran. I am a transfer student. I am a queer woman who had to rebuild her faith from scratch. I know what it feels like to walk into a new space and wonder if there's room for you at all, not just parts that are easy to explain. This fellowship is going to create a peer navigators so that the LGBT plus transfer students at USF don't have to figure it out alone. Because community isn't an accident, it's infrastructure, and we deserve to be built into it. Thank you guys all so much for making this happen. And everyone who believes in this project, faith, love, and loyalty, I am taking that seriously, and I hope I live up to everyone's expectations. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, I'm Hannah. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm so excited about the project this year. I am so incredibly filled with gratitude to be part of this community of activism and of inclusion. My project to establish a queer resource center has been inspired by my current work advocating for sexual health resources for all students within my position at Title IX. I am so excited to collaborate with not only USF organizations, but also the greater San Francisco community to help queer students on campus to flourish. Because of the generosity of the Robert Holgate Award, I will be able to make resources like binders, tucking underwear, prep, and menstrual products available to students. I cannot express how eternally grateful I am to be able to make these resources available to students. Thank you so much for your faith, your generosity, and your support.
I want to sit on the
Oh, okay.
but then you can.
We're gonna do this together.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I'd want to bring my other earthly angel here to come up, but I also want to just say that, Robert, in the 5 years that you and Pam have been growing this program, we've been able to bring over $500,000 to queering religion at the University of San Francisco. And that money has led to programs that include things like our weekly Breaking Binary brunches at the university ministry, free food, and socializing on Thursdays, every Thursday of the year. Our Spectrum Retreat, where we've been able to increase and bring an additional 20 students to have space off campus to retreat together. Our programs like the Lavender Lights Film Festival, that your gift generated, and Harks, Divine Queerness, artists performing our mythic ancestry to inspire us anew. And it's an extraordinary thing that the last anecdote I want to leave you with here is that this semester I had a chance to step into the class Queering Religion that Dr. Sasha Goldberg is teaching this semester. And one student wrote a note to me that said, I knew about queering religion at USF before I ever came here. It's actually what helped me to decide that this is where I would come. And I'm learning an incredible amount from Dr. Goldberg this semester. So that was very exciting. I want to invite you up to introduce our guests, and I want you to invite Pam, but here's the part I want to say. 40 years ago to the month, I came out as a lesbian to my mother. I did not expect it to go as awfully as it did. As she grasped what I was saying, she actually said, "You disgust me. I want nothing to do with you. Unless you need an organ donation or a blood transfusion, I'm ashamed." My mother eventually got support, including from PFLAG, and she evolved into an ally, walking me down the aisle, outing herself as the mom of a lesbian, and challenging homophobia as best she could. But those hurtful first reactions, that undiluted rejection, lives in my memory and animates my life's work to help and to heal those who've been traumatized by religious-based homophobia and transphobia. I think this is why anticipating tonight's lecture touches me so deeply. What can happen when there is joy and acceptance from the very beginning? So I invite Pam David to introduce us to tonight's, I invite Robert to introduce Pam.
Sorry, I promise I'll shut up after this. I want...
Come speak in here so it gets recorded.
Sorry, shoot. I want to give credit to Pam David. When Al died, I was tasked with a huge responsibility. And when Al was trying to figure out, he knew he was dying, he was trying to figure out his final wishes, he said, "Well, how are you going to do it?" And I said, "Well, I'll get somebody to help me." And he said, "Great." And you know, I picked Pam David. And her history, her knowledge, her depth of experience in the philanthropic world, I hit the jackpot. I truly, truly did. And I'm in constant wonder all the time. So I want to introduce my dear friend, my wifey when we travel, Pam David.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you all for being here. I don't usually believe in coincidences, but something happened about a year ago that has turned into magic. 1 year ago, as Robert's philanthropic consultant and friend and wifey, we were at a conference in Southern California, and I got there in the opening plenary a little bit early. I sat down at this big table, and this woman came and sat down next to me. We were the only two people at the table. And they gave us these little name tags that had our first names and where we were from. And this woman was Jen, Highland Park. Now, there are a lot of Highland Parks around the country. So I said, which Highland Park? And she said, Illinois. And I said, that's my Highland Park. And it was a coincidence, maybe. Maybe it was meant to happen. But we started talking, and I learned about the organization that she and her husband and daughter had started to support transgender youth and to give them a voice and help them dispel the myths and the hatred and the BS that goes on about they're not being real. They're more than real. Later I met John, and Robert met Jen and John at the conference. And that summer, I went back to Chicago to see my family, and I got to have coffee with them and got to meet Chazzie. Robert and I and the rabbi, we had talked a little bit about this 5th anniversary of the Baum lecture series and who should we invite and da-da-da. I was convinced that this family needed to present this lecture. There was so much aligned. First, Al was not born in Highland Park, but raised in Highland Park, went to Highland Park High School, came out here eventually, but didn't come out until he was 50, when he got kind of pulled out of the closet by friends. And not that he wasn't gay before then, but he had not publicly admitted it. I came out at the age of 23 after I had left Highland Park, where I had also grown up all my life and went to Highland Park High School. And then I got as far away from Highland Park as I could because it was 1970 and that's what you did. And I came to California and I've stayed in California ever since. And then there's Chazzie, who was 9 years old and crying up in the bedroom, and John and Jen heard Chazzie cry, and she said to him, I'm not your son, I'm your daughter. And they welcomed and accepted and opened their hearts without a moment's hesitation. And the story struck me so deeply because for so many of us, whether we are lesbians, gay men, bisexual, transsexual, asexual, the whole range of who we are, that's not most of our experiences. And yet it's so powerful to see what happens if we can change the world to make that more people's experiences. And I am absolutely overjoyed to be able to introduce you to Chazzie and Jen and John Grosshandler from Highland Park, Illinois.
Help you?
No, just move.
Hello, everyone. Well, thank you so much for having us. What a cool crowd. Look at all of these beautiful human beings. Oh my gosh, this is so awesome. So I'm Jen, y'all. My pronouns are she, her. I'm so happy to be here with my beautiful daughter and my beautiful husband. of 32 years. We've known each other we are so old.
It seems like just yesterday.
So, and I just want to thank this beautiful program of Jewish studies and social justice. I want to thank the extraordinary Rabbi Camille. I want to thank our unbelievably dear friends and mentors already, Pam and Robert, and your beautiful spouses, Cheryl and Al. I wish we could have got to know them. Because I can tell how cool they were and how interesting and loving and funny. What a blessing to be here. So, with most things in life that are worthwhile, they always start with a story. And so here is ours.
Hello everyone. First of all, I just want to thank you both again. And I'm just so tremendously grateful. So thank you. My name is Chazzie Grosshandler. My pronouns are she, her. I'm 19 years old, almost 20, less than 2 years old, 20. And I'm a freshman at the University of Arizona, double majoring in political science and pre-law and minor in Spanish. And ever since I was little, I always knew I was different than kids my age. As early as 2 years old, one of the first things I gravitated towards was t-shirts. And I put these plain white t-shirts on my head like it was hair, and I went with it. The grocery store, the park, I would even sleep in them. And as time kept going on, I would be still interested in more stereotypical girl things such as dolls, dresses, and sparkly clothes. And my parents saw that behavior, and they were confused, but wanted to make sure that their kid was happy. So over time, things were still evolving, and then it wasn't until one morning before 4th grade. I remember like it was yesterday, and I told my parents, with tears running down my face, after feeling like a part of me was missing, I said, Mom, Dad, I'm not just a boy who likes girly things. I am a girl, and I want you to know that. And they looked at me, and they held me tight and said, honey, we love you, we believe you, and we want you to have the best life ever. And fast forward a decade, I'm the proud transgender woman I've always been meant to be.
And so that experience for us, y'all, as parents, I mean, I remember back, John, you know, we thought we were so in the know and cool, and we thought we were doing all the right things and all that whatnot, and we didn't know. We didn't know. We didn't know how to support you in the best possible ways. And, you know, and I remember, we were talking, and I remember saying, you know what, we've just got to be educated. We have got to go to school, and we have got to do everything in our power to be the best people, the best parents, who will still make mistakes, who are still trying to figure out how to do this right, but by golly, we were going to give it everything we had. And before I'm going to hand it over to you, honey, just a sec, you know, people ask us, we're going to get to this tiny but mighty nonprofit that we created. We're from Chicago, like we're here in San Francisco. It's such a beautiful and different place in so many ways than where we are in the Midwest. And so because of our nonprofit, which we'll talk about in just a second, you know, folks ask us from around the country and around the world, they're like, John, Jen, like, what are the things? What are the things you did, you made mistakes on? What are the things that you learned? And I just want to share just a handful of those things, and I'll hand it over to you. So the first thing we learned is believe your child. Like, y'all know who you are. You do. And when we did that, magic happened. The next thing is choose positivity. So we had a choice, and every family, and I know that this isn't the way it works for so many families, and Rabbi, my heart breaks. And Robert, my heart breaks. The things y'all experience, I wish we could go back. I wish that didn't happen to y'all. And it doesn't need to happen. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. We chose positivity. We chose glass half full. We chose a different path. We chose to embrace change because life is different. Life isn't always what we thought it was going to be. And when we embraced change, when we knew that good people are everywhere in our community, you remember that? Chazzie's like, let's just tell everyone, like, this is a big deal. And it was a big deal. And so our whole school district and all of our superintendents and all of our day principals and 6,000 parents, we got out there and you wanted to do it and be visible, and we were behind you. And so we did the school policy work, and we connected with all of the right people. We did the things. And the last thing that I'll say is good people are everywhere. And we've learned that traveling the country and understanding that, you know what, y'all, this evil, this mean stuff that is happening in this country, I promise y'all, it does not represent most people in the United States of America and most people in this world. And I hope that every young person and every adult who has felt that level of anguish and agony, I hope that you'll embrace that, and you'll find hope and potentially a small amount of solace.
Thank you, Robert, and everyone who's being here. My name is John. I have he, him pronouns. I'm the proud papa bear of this extraordinary young woman you see beside me. And Jennifer talked about how we had a lot to learn. And part of the reason we had a lot to learn is that when Chazzie so bravely told us who she really was, we realized in that moment we had never, ever met anyone that was transgender that we were aware of in our entire life. And now we have this incredible 9-year-old trans girl to figure out how to raise. And it's been the honor of our lifetime, and we're still learning. We're learning every day, we're making mistakes every day. But we're filled with gratitude for the experience and for folks like you to embrace us. I just want to share that people come up to me and they're like, what's it like being the father of a transgender child? And I tell them it's actually a lot like being father of any child. I've got 4 incredible kids, one more incredible than the next. She's got 3 older brothers, and I want for her and work with her the same way I do her 3 brothers, and instill a sense of effort and gratitude and grace and service to community and leaving the world a better place than she's found it. And you get very high marks in all those regards, sweetheart, so thank you for that. I just want to touch really quickly on something Jennifer said about there's good people everywhere. And don't believe all the nonsense that you might see. Social media, right, the algorithm amplifies the most extreme voices on each side of the discussion. But that's not actually the reality. The vast majority of people we come in contact with across the spectrum, political, religious, etc., are supportive. They might have questions, but good people are everywhere. The last thing I want to say is we recognize we have a lot of privilege. We have a lot of privilege. You have a lot of privilege. and we know that not everyone has that privilege, and we feel called to use some of that privilege to share our story of just simply loving your child, getting educated, how to have them have the best, healthiest, and happiest life possible. And it's actually not so hard.
And y'all, we just couldn't stop at that. You know, we're a family. We are one family. And our family sat down 8 years ago when you told us who you always were. And we decided, you know what, we needed to help in some way that was so much bigger and so much more important than our family. And so here's what we did. We started to travel around the country, and I was like dead set. I'm like, we're going to meet as many young transgender and non-binary young people and the people who love them as possible. And I'm all over the country. I'm like a dog with a bone, and I'm meeting all these folks. And I was floored. I was floored by how funny, how ambitious, how talented, how cool young transgender and non-binary kids were. I mean, they were like 11 years old, and they were winning awards for opening, you know, businesses as little entrepreneurs on their 6th grade, you know, middle school campuses. And they were winning awards for writing, and they were creating software programs and films that were just like, yeah, good luck, Netflix, you. Like, this is the real thing. These young people were so awesome. But when I went to go look for these stories online, when I looked everywhere, y'all, I could not find them. It was like a potato chip and a whole bag of potato chips. What I did find was a tsunami of negative, inaccurate, just bunk information. And that's where this idea came about, which was, look, if still in this country, most folks say, to the best of their knowledge, they have never met a young transgender or non-binary person, and they're consuming this broken content, that is not right. And we wanted to jump in to try to fix that. And so we created the GenderCool Project. And we'll talk a little, I'm going to hand it over to you. It was a positivity forward. It is a positivity forward storytelling campaign that's simply helping people to replace their misinformed opinions. I'm very kind. We don't shout. We are not.
We meet people where they are. We recognize that everyone has a different experience, a different life journey. Even in this room, we've heard about a variety of things in your upbringing that might have you think about this differently. And so we meet people where they are. We don't slap them in the face for not putting pronouns in their signature. And we just have them meet these extraordinary kids. And when you meet them, you realize they're just like all their kids. And they deserve equal rights. And it's hard to hate up close. And so that's why we formed the GenderCool Project with a third co-founder, our lovely friend in our town of Highland Park. Her name is Xavier. She proudly identifies as transgender. You want to talk a little bit more about GenderCool?
Yeah, so we are 8 years old, which is just like crazy to think about. And like my parents said, when we were developing ideas and thoughts and conversations around how can we see other examples like my family's, we created GenderCool because all we saw was the negative. And while I do recognize the enormous privilege I have as a young trans woman, I also realize the setbacks. I'll give an example of my own. When I was in 4th grade, when I was slowly coming around to letting people know I'm Chazzie, my pronouns are she, her, I had this, who I thought was a friend, tell me at the age of 9, who, very religious girl, from a very religious family, say to me, God is crying because you're transgender. And I remember hearing that at age 9, when I just came out, feeling so upset and feeling like I was this demoralizing creature, this person, just because of my identity. And I look back on it and I reflect and I realize that it wasn't her that said it. It was her family. But I knew that I wanted to tell my parents, and I remember coming home crying, being so upset, just being like, can't believe someone would say this. So we're Jewish. And I met with my rabbi of my temple, Rabbi Wendy Geffen, who I adore so much. And I talked to her about this, and she shared a really beautiful example of the fact that the first person that God created was not a man, was not a woman, was neither. And how this person just lived their life. It made me feel so relieved and felt so affirmed, because these two intersectionalities of my identity matter so much to me. And I think it's really important in this day and age, given on everything that's going on in this world, to hear more examples, to see more representation of proud transgender, proud queer people who believe in faith, in whatever faith you belong to, Christianity, Judaism, being Muslim, etc. To see stories like that. Because we don't hear a lot about that. So I am blessed to live my life as who I am for now a decade, and to see all these different parts that intersect me, who I am, and to be able to be myself in every single part. So I know that was just like a big ramble, but just to see that, like, something I always like to say and acknowledge is that I do my work because of people that have come before me. Whenever I give a speaking engagement like this, whenever I'm at a gala or just at an organization, just to share my story as a proud transgender young person, I do it because of the beautiful Black and brown trans women and men of color who have come before me so I can thrive. Because, as we all know, this is not the first time our stories are existing. We have Stonewall in front of us. We have the AIDS movement in front of us. And this is not the first time that transgender and non-binary, gender-expansive people are living. And I think about it as I see these high people of such high power with what's going on in this world, trying to knock us down. And it makes me wonder, how can you hold so much hate for people that you don't even know? All you read about is the negative, false reality. And so, GenderCool's mission is really to show people like me that we're just human, that we have so many interests and passions that make us who we are.
Something Chazzie says and the other young people we call our GenderCool champions that really resonates with me is that they would say, I'm more than just a label, and that, quite frankly, being transgender is one of the least interesting things about me. And it's wonderful to hear a little bit about you and to learn that while that is an important part of her identity, she's many other things, including Jewish, including being passionate about volunteering, including being passionate about travel and learning Spanish, etc. And so, thank you for sharing a little bit about your story. So at GenderCool, I work a lot with our corporate supporters, and I just want to talk for less than a minute really about what you see in the news about the pushback in the last year or so on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And it's true that with the executive orders and other things going on that there's been a pullback, but I just want to share that most of it is still happening. It's just more internally facing at these companies as opposed to external. There's maybe rebranding, maybe some things aren't being done quite the same way, but it's been heartening to see that the work continues on. And there's actually been a lot of progress in the LGBTQ plus and trans non-binary space, and we're in the sort of blowback, pushback phase. That's been the case for all civil rights efforts before us. So It's a tough and sad time. I will say it's the intersectionality that we're seeing more and more in corporate settings and academic settings, that it's about your multiple identities. Maybe you're a person of color, maybe you're queer, maybe you've got other abilities, etc. And that's what makes you who you are. And instead of just focusing on one thing, the fact that we're focusing here on being both queer and religious is more representative and maybe a little harder for folks to attack.
Okay, and so, all right, so when John and I were growing up, so I'm from Atlanta, born and raised in Atlanta. So John and I met when, I moved to Chicago within like 6 hours of arriving to the city. It was just a wild sort of story. So
I was not hanging out at the airport waiting for her. That's not what happened.
That's not what happened. And so, a couple things. One, I did not grow up religiously. I was one of 4 kids. My parents sort of gave us the choice of how we wanted to do this and that and whatnot. And so we were raised culturally, not religiously. And, the older I got, and then I met you, and we talked about it, you weren't raised religiously either, right? And you had the coolest parents in the world, and I remember hanging out with them for years and years. And so when we had a family, we just felt, you know what, there's got to be something there for us. And Rabbi, you talked about how faith can be so painful because it can guide people to a place where they forget how to treat human beings and who we are as human beings, and how unbelievably life-changing and life-saving it should be to just be kind. And so, I see like a ton of super cool, like young people here, and, wherever your life takes y'all, and whatever your decisions are, for us, we were able to find just some really cool experiences and connections and support through our particular faith. But all my friends in the South, y'all, they're not Jewish. And many of them are quite conservative and quite religious. Many of my friends are born-again Christians. And recently, I was down back in Atlanta, and we all got together, 6 of us from my high school. And we all went out, and we hadn't been together in decades, because I'm like super old, and we hadn't seen each other in decades, and we all just somehow decided to go out. So we went out. And here I am with my friends who live in small towns in Georgia, and we just had normal conversations and picking the menu choices and talking about family or kids or our work and whatnot. And all of a sudden, there was like this silence. This hesitation. And I looked around and they're sort of looking at me. And I'm like, oh my God, something is about to go down. Something's going to go down. And one of my friends, Fran Davis, said to me, Jen, do you mind if we ask you a question about your daughter? And I said, please ask me a question. Let's talk. And that started the most unbelievable multi-hour soiree where all of these super conservative, small town, lovely people all basically said in unison, we just don't understand, and we want to understand. And we love you, Jen, and we know you, and we grew grew up with you, and we love your family, and we didn't know if it was okay to ask questions. We didn't know if it was okay to have a discussion. And I will never forget that, y'all. I will never forget that. Good people are everywhere. And so, my last thing before we finish, so we're going to finish with plenty of advance time or whatever y'all want to do, is, you know, when we started GenderCool, you know, we had nothing. We didn't have this, we had $5, we were out of a garage sort of thing. We were just like, but we have the passion. We know that if only people could meet these young people, and there are 20 young people, including this extraordinary, he's like our honorary son, Kai, who's here, who's so unbelievable. You know, so Kai's been with GenderCool come up here for a sec, come up here, get up. I would love for you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your experience with GenderCool. This is not planned, and you have to do it.
You want to sit here? Do you want to lean appropriately? Do you want to lean appropriately?
Hi, everyone.
Okay, excellent.
Hi.
All right, awesome.
Hi, y'all. I thought I was just doing social media content.
Yeah, you are. You are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kai Farr. My pronouns are he, him. I am from the East Coast. I'm from Brooklyn. So this is my first time in San Francisco. Loving it so far. I just graduated from Boston University. I was studying media science, gender studies, and film production, and I'm really passionate about the intersection of all of those things. And my work with the GenderCool Project has been probably since the beginning.
It's like a third of your life.
Yeah, it's
like
a third of my what feels like a long but pretty short life so far. Yeah, so I met the Gross Handlers. I saw, to be honest with you, I grew up in a pretty conservative religious town, and my very immediate family was very accepting when I came out to them at the age of 10 as not their daughter, but their son. My immediate family was very accepting. However, it came with the stipulation that if I were to transition, it was going to be very much under the radar. Because even though in my house we could talk about it, in my town we could not. And so with that came a level of pride of being myself for the first time, but shame in having to hide that when I walked out the front door every morning, right? And then, one day, I saw on the Today Show these young, proud, successful, happy, thriving trans young people, including Chazzie. And it was really the first time where I realized that I could be seen as my full self and also accepted and visible. And so I just kind of on a whim sent an email to like info@GenderCool at the time, and didn't think I would hear back, but was basically like, thank you from upstate New York for this little trans kid for doing this. And then Jen got back and was like, can you get on FaceTime with your parents and also let's talk, let's chat. And that started my journey. That was 8 years ago, and as of February, so I worked as a champion with Chazzie all throughout high school and college. Then I was an intern, and now I am the social media and communications coordinator for GenderCool, which I am so proud to be, as well as the honorary son of the Gross Handlers.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yeah, so that's a little about me, and I'm going to hand it back to the family, but thank you all, and I'm happy to talk to you all more about the experience and stuff. Please feel free to come up to me or any of us after this, but I hand this back to you, and I'll go back to get more social content since that's my job now.
Nice. Okay, that was so fun. Okay, we have a bunch of questions. Are you ready for the questions?
Thanks, Ready, we're going to be.
Okay. And feel free to continue generating questions, but, okay, so here's a question. How does your Judaism inform your queer identity and your understanding of your own identity? I'm going to read a few questions and you can decide which ones you're going to answer first. How did you balance wanting to protect your daughter and letting her tell the world who she is? Okay, let's start with those questions.
Sure, okay, so, for the first one, I think for me, when I was really, like my parents said, like they grew up very just not like culturally, culturally yes, but not very religious, sorry. And so like when I came out to them, like even at my temple, like growing up, like everyone would see me like go with the girls more, dressed up, etc. And so like I knew that I wanted to be Chazzie everywhere. And so I remember so clearly, like, as I came out, I realized that it wasn't just going to be a transition for me, but for my family and for my faith. And so I remember so clearly one of my favorite memories of feeling so affirmed for my identity and my religion was there's a video of me in 4th grade, just like at the kitchen counter, just chilling, came home from school, and I got in the mail my bat mitzvah date. And for those who don't know, bat mitzvah, bar mitzvah is basically just a commemoration, celebration of life in the Jewish world, just celebrating becoming an adult. So even though I was very still presenting more masculine and hadn't fully socially transitioned, to see on paper a bat mitzvah date was huge. Oh my gosh, like it was incredible. So I think for me, like, my Judaism and my religion has really taught me to just, even though I knew this before, love everyone. See everyone for who they are. And not just look at one little thing to define them. And so, at my campus, I'm involved, we have 3 Jewish organizations at my school, and I'm involved in all of them. The most prevalent one being Hillel, which is a very popular one amongst campuses, where I'm actually on the student board where I do social media, marketing, and development. And they all accept me, they all get me, and while I know that not every story of Judaism or faith is going to be the same, I claim both of those parts of my identity because they make me who I am. And I live it, I breathe it 24/7. So hope that answers your question, but yeah.
I'll take a stab at, I think, the second question, which is how do you balance the safety of your child or your family with being an advocate? And I want to give Jen more of the credit here, because my initial reaction when she brought up the idea of going public with this, and this was in 2016, my initial thought was that that sounded like risk and unnecessary risk. And this was even before it's gotten as bad as it has recently, and yet we talked about it and we realized, going back to the privilege that we know we have on many, many levels, that while yes, it would be safer not to use our voice, if everyone who came before us didn't use their voice, we wouldn't have any of the rights of marginalized communities that we have today, and that we felt an obligation, quite frankly, to share our voice and to harness our privilege, to have people meet incredible young people like Kai, like Chazzie, because we know that when they meet them and when their parents hear their stories, this changes and can even save lives. And so when we realized what was at stake, we felt the risk was worthwhile, and we took reasonable things to protect ourselves, but in this day and age, you can't protect yourselves fully. And I will say that we really had nothing bad. We had, after the Today Show, when 3 million folks saw Chazzie come out on national TV, including Kai, we did have a Bible show up in the mailbox with something about how, kudos to your family for loving your child, but this is against Scripture. Other than that, and all sorts of hateful comments online that we no longer read, there's been no threat to our safety, no doxing, thankfully. And we're grateful for that. And it goes back to what Jenny said, which is most people in this country and this world are kind and good people, and they don't want to tell us as a family how to raise our kids.
Go ahead, Chelsea.
I just want to quickly add on to that, every time, like, I'm at an event or GenderCool, what I love is that it's in the power of the young people to decide when they want to speak and when they don't. We've had people speak for a couple years and then decide that they don't want to be involved anymore, take a little break, and it's all in the power of the young people. And that's what I'm so grateful for. Every time I have an opportunity, my parents come to me and they say, honey, do you want to do this? We want you to feel comfortable doing it. And I'm just so grateful because I've seen and heard online of experiences of people that don't have that privilege and that are just essentially roped into it. And that is a true reality. So I just want to acknowledge that, like, for me, it's all a choice. And for GenderCool, it's all a choice. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Here's a delicate question. How do you navigate addressing parents or adults who believe kids are, quote, too young to know that they're transgender or non-binary? I ask because this is a common perspective I hear from adults growing up, as I've grown up. Thank you.
So, excellent question. And
One we hear all the time, and it's a fair question.
It is a fair question. And the way I answer it is, I am a person who has probably hung out with and worked with more young transgender and non-binary people, ages 9, 10 to 20, 22, over the course of 8 years than nearly anyone in this country who's, for instance, the exception who's not a doctor, who's caring for transgender and non-binary kids. So that's my life experience. And so what I tell people is, these dozens and dozens of young kids who I've known for more than half their lives are the exact same happy, fulfilled young people who I met when they were the age where everyone says they were too young to know who they were. The proof, y'all, it's in the pudding. Chazzie, you were like when you just had the words, right? You were like this little toddler. You had the words, and go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, no. Like, I mean, to your point, like my parents were saying, like, when your child or loved one tells you who they truly are, believe them. And I mean, for me, like 9 years old, like, I know while I was coming out to my parents and telling them who I truly was, like, it's a really deep, big thing for such a young person to say. But if they say it with their heart and they speak it, believe them, because it's their story to tell.
And I'll just say very quickly, there's actually a lot of data on this exact question. And there's a lot of data on all these questions. It's just that the data isn't what's making it through on social media. It's the extremist disinformation, misinformation, hateful rhetoric that makes it through. But the data is very clear that typically for most of these young people, it's 3 to 4 years old, that they know their gender. They have a sense for it. They often don't have the words for it. But you were attracted to all the girly stuff as soon as you could make choices, the girl colors, the girl toys, the girl websites. And we hear that from almost every child we meet. And where the delta comes is when they find the words and when they choose to disclose. But in the vast majority of cases, whether you're cisgender or you're transgender, you know who you are when you're very young.
And for those people, there are so many families and young people who know who they are, and it's not safe for them, right? It's not safe for them at age 4, 5, 6, 7. They sense and they see that their family life or their community, it may not be the right thing. And so, you know, so transgender and non-binary young people, and we've heard so many different stories and diverse stories, and they're all valid, and they're all accurate, and they're all truthful. But this question around how do you know for sure, and oh, I just want to be a pony, so make me a pony, right? I mean, these are just folks who just need to be educated, and also they need to meet these young people.
I do also want to say, as you tell us that other question, there are certainly many examples, wonderful examples of folks who are older when they figure out exactly what's maybe been going on all their life, but they weren't quite sure, and in almost every case when they decide to transition, which is very, very brave as an older person, in almost every case they're filled with joy and relief. And it's not that it's going to be some easy life, but I just want to honor the many different examples of people finding who they really are.
So here's the last written question, and then we may have time for one question from the audience. Do you and GenderCool feel obligated, positioned, to fight misinformation from the astroturfed grassroots orgs like Moms for Liberty, or Parents Defending Education? And if not, why are they outside your concern? And if so, how do you go about it?
Well, they're very much in our world. They're very much in our sphere. Oh, Jiminy Crickets, like, So here's what's so interesting about the work that we do. Because our work is based on sort of positivity forward, relatable, human stories from young people themselves, it has proven to be an absolute pickle for Moms for Liberty and the Alliance for Defending Freedom and right-wing media. Like, y'all, they don't know what to do with us. They're like, how do you, because how do you debate someone's personal story? And so it's really very, very interesting that we're on quite a few lists. We're on quite a few lists. And yet, we keep doing the work. And we're doing it a little differently. We have to be mindful. We have to be cognizant of, for many young people right now, it is not a good idea to be external facing, front facing. But guess what we get to do? We get to work with like cool content creators who are creating Emmy award-winning content series that represent beautiful transgender people. We get to work with gaming companies so that as they're putting out their coolest new version of one of the most popular games in the world, that their transgender characters are informed by Kai, Chazzie, and your champion peers. Y'all get to write books. You get to go into town halls of corporate America. The corporations, they are not all retreating. And so this work is happening. This work is happening. So more that internal work is work that our friends at Moms for Liberty, our friends may not know about. may not know about it. But y'all, they don't scare us. They never will. They never have. And the last thing I'm going to tell you about is, if y'all don't know about this amazing organization called Mama Dragons, okay, here we go. They're based in Utah. They started by a group of Mormon moms. Mormon moms, many who are Latter-day Saints, part of the Mormon whole thing, right? Intense. And they reached out to us. We were on the podcast. It's called In the Den. We went in the den with the Mama Dragons. So think about that. There's like 2,000 of them, and they're like, we are moms and parents, and we have LGBTQ kids, and there is no way we are going to let our religion get in the way of us loving our kids. So y'all, this stuff is happening. It's very cool.
Well, we're at the end of our time, but I just want to say thank you so much for being, for inspiring young people to think about maybe what kind of allies they can be in their family systems, and what kind of parents you can be one day, because you'll have a choice how you show up. And one of the things you said that I really loved was, we make mistakes. That's part of being human, but it's what you do when you learn that you've made a mistake, when you make an amends, when you reach out and say, hey, can you teach me something so I can meet the moment? So thank you for coming and being our heroes. Thank you again to Robert and Pam and all of you who support the Korean religion work here. We love you, GenderCool, and your family.